Hello everyone, welcome to my presentation. Today I'm going to be talking about factors affecting performance, an in-depth look at exercise physiology. So let's start with a little bit of background information that will help you understand these factors. There is quite a bit that affects our physical and athletic performance. Essentially all of our body systems are involved. Luckily we have taken some time in this class to go over each of these, but just as a little review, these will be our mainly important topics as we discuss different factors that do affect performance. So first and foremost is bioenergetics. This just refers to our physical energy and the way that that energy flows through our body. It's going to be a lot to do with ATP production, our main currency of energy, and the different aerobic and anaerobic energy systems that produce and use ATP. So diving a little bit further into bioenergetics, we'll refer to exercise metabolism as we are talking about exercise performance. We'll need to understand the conversion of food into energy, and that's going to be done through our biological systems, namely glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and oxidative phosphorylation, or the ATP-PCR system. We'll talk a lot about the nervous system and its impact on performance. Specifically, we'll need to remember how the nervous system controls muscle contractions and how motor units and neural activation do affect our physical performance. Skeletal muscle is another area of the body that's important, especially our muscle fiber structure and its function. So if you remember, our different types of muscle fibers include type 1, slow twitch muscles, type 2A, also known as fast twitch, fatigue-resistant muscles, and type 2X, or fast twitch, fatigable muscles. So we'll also get into cardiovascular response, namely our heart and blood vessel response to exercise. That'll be important in understanding cardiac output, which is again our heart rate times our stroke volume, and just refers to the amount of blood that is exiting the heart. Respiratory responses, so respiratory system support during exercise, and this will be important especially during aerobic exercise and all types of performance, but our ventilation, gas exchange, and oxygen transport will affect performance. When we get into the endocrine and hormone responses, there's going to be hormonal regulation of exercise, as we have discussed in this class, and those key hormones including adrenaline or epinephrine, cortisol, and insulin. Okay, so let's get into it. Some general principles. We're going to talk about different sites of fatigue. So fatigue is going to be probably one of the number one things that impacts our performance. And this can occur, research suggests, in two places. So we refer to as central fatigue, and this is mainly going to occur in the central nervous system. Like we talked about in the background, the nervous system is responsible for controlling muscle contraction, so that's a very possible site of fatigue. Secondly, it's going to be peripheral fatigue, and this is going to get into the actual body in those skeletal muscle and different body tissues. We'll need to talk about factors limiting anaerobic performance. So those factors are going to mainly be our muscle power, which does differ person to person. That gets into our different muscle types, as well as strength, and our phosphocreatine stores, again, those anaerobic systems, and glycolytic capacity. Then our factors limiting aerobic performance. This mainly is going to be our VO2 max, our lactate threshold, and efficiency of our muscles. And so these fatigue, anaerobic performance, and aerobic performance are general principles considering the factors that affect our physical performance. Okay, so training principles. This will be important to understand because the way that we train is probably going to be the number one thing that impacts our performance. We can do things like change our fatigability, improve the efficiency of our muscles. So different training principles that I want to talk about is going to be overload. This one I think has been talked about a lot recently. This just refers to increasing either the intensity, the duration, or the frequency of your training. Specificity, This refers to training specific to the sport or activity. And so we have an example of specificity in this picture. As you can see, this woman is running, and this attached to her is going to increase wind resistance. And so what that's going to do is improve sprinting times. It's more than likely she's training to sprint. So that's specificity. Reversibility is also very important. This refers to the loss of fitness when training stops. So if our training does stop, it's very possible that our performance will decrease due to this principle of reversibility. And then finally, genetic influence. Genetics are going to play a huge role in genetic predisposition to certain performance traits. But we'll talk about a little later in the presentation how some of that can be influenced as well, and some research on that. Okay, so when we talk about training to actually improve our performance, we'll get into these 4 areas that will affect our performance. So first and foremost being aerobic power. The way that we're going to train to improve our aerobic power is going to be primarily endurance training or interval training. Then when we get into anaerobic power, we'll be able to improve that as well. This is going to be done mainly through high intensity interval training, as opposed to just interval training, and sprint training, among others. There are other ways to increase aerobic power, or anaerobic power, I'm sorry. Flexibility. This will be achieved mainly through stretching exercises as well as mobility. And flexibility is going to have a huge impact, especially as we get into specific movements, as well as longevity of performance. Then muscular strength. Muscular strength is improved through resistance training or weightlifting, and muscular strength is important. I just want to take a moment to talk about how these different performance factors, they don't just act independently. Oftentimes, training to improve one of them can improve other areas. So as this little chart points out, it has 5 benefits of strength training for runners. So as opposed to simply training aerobic power, if runners also train their muscular strength, there can be benefits such as improved running economy, longer time to exhaustion at maximal speed, rate of force development or their power, among other things. And we'll talk about this more as well later. Okay. So beyond just training our physical systems, there will be other factors that do impact our performance. So a huge one is going to be nutritional influence on training-induced skeletal muscle adaptations, or simply put, your nutrition, how you're fueling your body. I think we've all heard the term, you can't outrun a bad diet, you can't out-train it, and so supporting your training with proper nutrition, proper fueling, is going to impact your performance quite a bit for the better. And so getting into why that is, 2 main things. So our carbohydrate availability in our skeletal muscle will influence endurance training adaptation, and then our protein availability in skeletal muscle will influence muscle protein synthesis following exercise. That's going to be very important for building muscle or hypertrophy. Another factor that can and will impact your performance is some common training mistakes. So when we see, especially in advanced athletes, it's going to be overtraining, and that's hand in hand with the next, which is a lack of recovery. The quality of your sleep, again, the quality of your nutrition surrounding your training, and that time to rest and to heal is going to be very important in ensuring that you don't hit a wall in your training, that you can continue to improve. Okay, so some other factors continuing that affect performance, especially in athletes, is going to be year-round conditioning. So it used to be quite common for athletes to train during their on-season and rest during their off. But increasingly, we've seen the benefit of training year-round. Again, that's going to take us back to that principle of reversibility. When we stop training, our fitness levels go down. And so this year-round training is accomplished through periodization and planning. We don't want to be burnt out. but we have seen the benefits of training year-round. So this graph kind of highlights this principle quite a bit. Down here, these lines that kind of stay steady performance-wise, this is going to be more of that on and off method of training. But these 3 lines specifically, where we start to see big jumps in performance, especially with the upper one, these are going to be year-round training models. The most efficient on this graph being 4 times per week year-round, so just continual training every week. Secondly, we're going to talk about concurrent training programs. So we kind of referred to this a bit on a previous slide, how strict training can be helpful for runners and many other athletes as well. So this is just referring to balancing strength and aerobic and endurance training. These things do complement each other, and we have seen lots of research suggesting that as you do train concurrently, you will see improvements in both. And that can be, depending on your goals, you want to approach that carefully, but it is definitely possible. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of current research. The first thing I want to talk about is this article titled Overview of Major Physiological Factors Affecting Athletes' Aerobic Fitness Level. So again, we talked about aerobic factors limiting aerobic performance, and that is a big area of study right now. So this review specifically discusses VO2 max, running economy, lactate threshold, and other factors that influence aerobic performance. You'll probably recognize many of these terms from our lab, and each of these things, as we improve them, will improve aerobic performance. This article gets a little bit into fatigue. It's titled Beyond the Symptom, the Biology of Fatigue. And it does a deep dive into the underlying mechanisms of fatigue, distinguishing between fatigue and fatigability, and highlights key advances in understanding fatigue across various conditions. So, as you can see, this is just a graph highlighting some of the factors that influence aerobic performance. And here in this graph that is found in the textbook, these are all different areas where we can observe fatigue, or that have been suggested as possible sites of fatigue. So as you can see, there are many. So it is a big field of research right now. Okay, another big field of research is going to be genetics. Both of these articles approach that. This article is titled Influence of Genetic Polymorphism on Sports Talent Performance. So this systematic review and meta-analysis examines the role of genetic polymorphisms. So as I talked about earlier, our genetics do play a role in our affinity for different performance abilities, but recently we've been looking a lot at genetics and exactly what role they play, and then if those genetics are able to be influenced or changed. And so there's been a lot of promising research, especially with these 2 genes called ACE and ACTN3 in athletic performance. So I'm going to take a minute to look at this graph here, which does come from this study. And so these blue and orange refer to before training and after training, and this just shows ACE and ACTN3. So as you can see, the levels are fairly low pre-training, but post-training we see a huge jump, huge increase. So that's a pretty cool area of study right now. Then this article is titled The Role of Genetics in Improving Fitness and Sports Performance. Again, touching on that, it's a well-researched field at the moment. So this study highlights how genetic variations affect nutritional responses and training adaptations, providing insights for personalized nutrition plans. So it's pretty cool. They start to blend genetics and nutrition and how people's nutritional needs do differ with their genetics. Okay, so let's talk about practical application. Why is this important? Who is it mainly important for? So it is pretty broad. Mainly, the application of this is going to be with athletes and patients. It will be very important for both of those groups. Athletes, it will allow them to optimize their training and performance. And this is going to be done working closely with their coaches. So it's also applicable to coaches. And coaches, when they understand these physiological, psychological, and environmental factors, they can design programs that work with those factors to enhance performance accordingly. Patients, especially patients with chronic conditions like diabetes or cardiovascular disease, we show that they can improve those conditions and their symptoms with tailored exercise programs. So this will be important as physicians understand these factors. They can provide appropriate medical advice and monitor the health of the patients and athletes. And then exercise physiologists will play an important role in this as well. They're going to conduct assessments and create personalized exercise programs based on individual needs and goals. And those programs will be better when they understand the factors that will influence performance. And then nutritionists will play a key role here, both with athletes and patients. Nutritionists and dietitians, when they understand these factors, they can develop nutrition plans that support training and recovery and optimize performance and health outcomes. Okay, well, thanks for coming along with me. So just in summary, some of the different things we talked about are physiological factors that impact performance, mainly muscle fiber type, cardiovascular fitness, and metabolic efficiency. We talked a little bit about psychological factors, especially in regards to fatigability, and that would be motivation, stress, mental resilience. These will all play crucial roles in performance. Different environmental factors will impact performance, such as temperature, altitude, and humidity. Nutritional factors, proper nutrition, hydration, and sometimes supplements are essential for optimal performance. You cannot have optimal performance without nutritional factors. Different training principles impact our performance. Relying on overload, specificity, and reversibility are fundamental principles for excellent training. Current research that's being done right now that we looked at provide further insights into fatigue, further insights into anaerobic and aerobic performance, genetic influences, and nutritional impact. Practical application, understanding these factors is important for athletes and patients with their coaches, physicians, nutritionists, and dietitians, and exercise physiologists playing key roles. Okay, quiz time. I'm going to take you through a little quiz that just goes over some of the different things that we touched on that will impact performance. Okay, question 1, what is the primary energy system used during high-intensity, short-duration exercise? So we have aerobic system, anaerobic glycolysis, the ATP-PCR system, or oxidative phosphorylation. If you chose ATP-PC system, you are correct. Question 2, which principle of training states that fitness improvements are lost when demands on the body are lowered? We have overload, reversibility, specificity, or progression. If you chose reversibility, you are correct. Question 3, which type of muscle fiber is most resistant to fatigue? We have type 1, type 2A, type 2X, or type 3. If you chose type 1, you are correct, but type 3 does not exist. Sorry about that. Question 4, what is the main factor limiting aerobic performance? We have muscle power, VO2 max, phosphocreatine stores, or glycolytic capacity. If you chose VO2 max, congratulations, you are on roll. Finally, what is the term for the gradual increase in exercise intensity to improve fitness? Overload, progression, specificity, or reversibility? If you chose overload, you are incorrect. But if you chose progression, you are correct. Congratulations. Alright, that's all I have for you today, so thank you for participating in my presentation. See you next time.